Marrakesh is a labyrinth of streets, colors, flavors, and heart-pounding emotions. You'll literally get lost in it under a spell of synesthesia. In due course, I figured out how to decipher this maze and how to take it all in and fully savor its lyrical narrative, and now I'm ready to share my revelations. Here are 10 very good reasons why you should also allow yourself to be outright bewitched by Marrakesh. Reason number 1. Medina. The Medina of Marrakesh is the part of the city that is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site for historic and cultural reasons. It is an arrondissement, the much larger city of Marrakesh, and a highly touristic area. It was founded in 1070 as the seat of the Berber Muslim rulers of the Almoravid Empire. Since that time and until the proclamation of the kingdom upon liberation from the Spanish and the French suzerainty, the name of the city and that of the country were used interchangeably, Morocco and Marrakesh. The Almoravid Empire was replaced by the Almohad Caliphate, who built Marrakesh's most iconic landmark, the Koutoubia Mosque, in 1147, as well as its citadel, the Kasbah, which remains the location of Dar el-Makhzen Palace of today's reigning king of Morocco when visiting the city. Still standing from that time are parts of the city walls and the Babagnou Gate, as well as the Agdal Gardens, which are also recognized by UNESCO along with the Medina. Other existing monuments, such as the Saadian tombs and the ruins of the Bari Palace, date back to the 16th century, from the so-called Golden Age of the Saadian dynasty. Through the centuries, the city became an important trading center, and the entire area of the Medina is still occupied today by a maze of streets and souks, mostly catering to tourism. Nevertheless, life in Medina goes on as usual. Aside from riads and shops that cater to visitors, the rest belongs to the locals. Grocery shops, fresh markets, hairdressers, butchers, handymen, tailors, plus schools, mosques, and workshops are all part of Medina's life. And more importantly, artists and artisans and their workshops. What they create is sold to the tourist invasion that strikes the city day in and day out. Overall, tourism is one of Morocco's most relevant industries. The Koutoubia Mosque is one of the most photographed monuments of the Medina. A Sunni Islam mosque built in the local Almohad Moroccan style, Koutoubia has one impressive minaret of 77 meters in height. The one standing today was built slightly later, towards the end of the 1100s. The mosque is strictly a place of worship and is not open to non-Muslims. After the September 8, 2023 earthquake, the minaret of the mosque suffered structural damages, as did the Medina overall. Reconstruction efforts are ongoing. Reason number 2. Ait Ben Haddou. Marrakesh sits at the crossroad between the sea, the mountains, and the desert. Its raison d'etre was to be a trading post on the route between the Sahara Desert and the port cities on the Atlantic coast. The pass through the high Atlas Mountains by Tizi and Tika, southeast of Marrakesh, going to Ouarzazate, the so-called Door of the Desert, allowed the caravans to move goods from the Berber nations of the Sahara toward the ocean. The first biggest rest stop after crossing the Sahara on that route was the fortified city, or Ksar, of Ait Ben Haddou. You can reach it in a one-day round trip from Marrakesh, a trip that will afford you the most incredible slideshow of panoramic views, including the green oasis of the city you are just leaving, surrounded by oleander forests, followed by mountain ranges that grow higher and higher, and later descending into drier and drier lands. The Ksar of Ait Ben Haddou is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Albeit barely populated, the village within the 45 walls still exists, and you can visit the entire location. From the top of that fortress, the views are impressive, although seeing it from afar is even more mesmerizing. Kingdom of Heaven, The Gladiator, Games of Thrones, Prince of Persia, Kundun, The Mummy are just a few movies and series that chose it as a filming location. The materials used to build it are similar to adobe and do require ongoing reinforcement. The 2023 devastating earthquake has caused damages to the walls of the fortress. Hopefully, being under protection as a National Historic Monument and a UNESCO site, it can be restored and preserved for more generations to come. Reason number 3, souk. Inside the walls of the Medina, there are several shopping districts, or better said, agglomerations of stores, each selling a certain type of goods. These are called souks. Nevertheless, since it is quite impossible to keep track of their names and locations, the whole area with stores, sellers, and peddlers is called the Marrakesh souk. Even for seasoned travelers, it is quite a challenge to navigate it. But there is always a way, isn't it? I will tell you a rather simple way of how to do it. On your first day, just stroll. Look around and get used to faces and places. Take in the smells of the spices, leather, and fruits. Find the color schemes and patterns you would like to take home, the textures, the shapes, the fabrics, the dishes, the lamps. First buys are always impulsive, and last ones are panic purchases. Thus, in the souk, you should never be in a rush. Worried that you'll get lost? Follow this simple rule. Set yourself a starting point, walk in one direction, and return to your starting point. If you repeat this pattern, you can navigate the souk on all its main alleys and never get lost. Always look behind you as well to familiarize yourself with the sights you'll see when going back. Asking for directions is like opening the proverbial can of worms. If you want to know prices in advance, ask at stores located in the plaza or in the city. From there, it should be less in a souk. Be considerate when haggling. It should be fun. If you feel overwhelmed by the insistent, unsolicited offerings, go shopping at noon. It's much quieter. Remember that even the word no means that you started a conversation you might have to finish. Overall, though, the treasures that you will bring back home will be the most beautiful memories of your trip. I think I shopped in the Marrakesh souk more than in any other bazaar in the world, and I will go back there just for the shopping alone. Reason number 4, Majorelle. In the 70s, Marrakesh had become a mecca for artists, hippies, and expats returning to the city to enjoy its bohemian vibe. Among them was the renowned fashion designer Yves Saint Laurent, who decided to make out of Marrakesh a second home by purchasing in 1980 a garden and villa that had been originally created by a French Orientalist painter named Jacques Majorelle in the 1930s. The villa was subsequently redone and redecorated by the designer and his partner Pierre Berger. The famous Majorelle gardens, now open to the public, and which took decades to create, also include, aside from the Cubist villa, the Pierre Berger Museum of Berber Art, and a more recent Yves Saint Laurent museum. The constructed sections of the garden and the planters are painted in vivid colors, mostly in blue. It is said that the painter had fallen in love with the blues he found on the walls of Marrakesh and refined the shade to an intense and vibrant blue that carries today his name, Majorelle Blue. Both the garden and the home have inspired Yves Saint Laurent's creations over the years. He became Dior's successor at 21 and opened his own label at 24. His ashes were scattered at the Majorelle Gardens, and his partner continued his legacy after his passing. It is impossible not to think about art and fashion when you visit. The air is filled with nostalgia and with dubs of color, yellows, fuchsias, greens, and blues, like a painter's palette that has come to life. Reason number 5, Riyadh. Today, in Morocco, smaller inns are called riads. A riad is actually a courtyard, an interior garden with columns, water fountains, and places to rest that afford privacy and protection from the street. The Marrakesh Medina is full of them, since most homes were built like that in the past, and many are used today as tourist lodgings. Their charm is unbelievable, true fairy tale-like places. Starting as early as the Almoravid dynasty, craftsmen from Cordoba and Sevilla were called in. They brought Andalusian influences, following the Cordoban Umayyad style of decorating monuments with carved domes and cusped arches. Saharan and West African elements were also brought in, since the Almoravid Empire stretched over a good part of northern Africa and southern Spain. On the basis of the local vernacular architecture and the Moroccan Amazigh building style found in the Kasbahs of the Atlas Mountains, a unique Moroccan architecture and decorative style were formed over the centuries. From Islamic architecture and design, Morocco borrowed the multi-column courtyards, the decoration of the walls with calligraphy, the geometric painted or tiled patterns, and the arabesque motifs. These are intricate, interlaced designs that can be repeated over and over, some simply geometric, while others include sinuous shapes. Minarets and muqarnas were also of Islamic origin, while later additions were the horseshoe arch, the carved stucco, the Riyadh courtyards, and a mosaic tile work called zilish, very prominent in Marrakesh. Newer buildings also draw inspiration from tradition. The Mamounia Hotel, built in 1929, is a great example of the fusion between Moroccan architecture and the French Art Deco. Throughout the city you can find examples of all these influences, be it in the houses of worship that withstood the ravages of time for almost a millennia, or in the more modest abodes of the Medina. Reason number 6. Crafts. If I would have ever known how hard it was to craft the leather slippers that a vendor offered me so insistently at the souk, before I went to see the tanneries, I would have paid him more than double the price. I'm serious. We are so eager to think that everything is made somewhere, in an air-conditioned space, by a machine, and that the leather and the dyes just drop out of the sky on the shoemaker's lap. I rarely get a cultural shock when traveling because I do my research, but none of the images or descriptions of these tanneries told the truth. That's why I decided to be the exception. Here is how the leather slippers are made. I bought a pair, and I bought a tiny carpet as a gesture of appreciation to the artisans, a thank you for revealing to us, the oblivious tourists, how souvenirs become reality. The carpet workshop was in the mountains, and I visited it while driving to Ait Ben Haddou, as one of the 2 obligatory shopping stops of the tour. I got inebriated by the colors. I wish I could cover my whole life in these carpets. And by the way, they last forever. To complete the sensorial experience, let's add to smells, textures, and colors the miracle of light. Lanterns come in so many shapes and sizes, all over the globe. Though the craftsmen of Marrakesh have managed to combine the old with the new, tradition with modern-day sensibilities, and create the most stunning, light-giving objects of art. I wish I could have teleported some of these back home, but they are still hanging in there, waiting for me to return. What did make it into my suitcase, by a number not to be disclosed, are ceramic tiny bowls, tagines, and other accoutrements for my kitchen. They make me smile every time I look at them. Reason number 7. Morocco. Marrakesh is neither the capital nor the largest city of Morocco, the Maghreb Kingdom as it is correctly named. The capital is Rabat and the largest city is Casablanca. Marrakesh, though, is somehow its focal point. It is rare for a country to have such a lineup of major historic cities strung along a coast. Tangier, Rabat, Casablanca, Agadir, each coming with its own chronicles akin to those of the Game of Thrones. Add Fez and Marrakesh, and you can spend years studying the history of tribes, invasions, nomad migrations, dynasties, caliphates, empires, and protectorates which have ebbed and flowed through its territory. Tangier, a major port on the Gibraltar Strait, is the closest to Spain and has surely seen its share of major historic events. Farther south, down the Atlantic coast, is Rabat, the capital of Morocco, a UNESCO Modern and Historic World Heritage Site. Casablanca does not need any introduction. It is the largest city of the country, a major financial center, and the Royal Navy port. Agadir is the southernmost largest city and port, with beaches, and only second in tourism to Marrakesh. Fez and Chefchaouen are 2 major competitors in that respect, with Fez being the second largest city, while the latter being a tiny village all painted in blue. The location of Marrakesh makes it the ideal place to dare a double trouble trip of surf and snow. On one side, the city is literally located at the foothills of the high Atlas Mountains, while the country's most charming fishing town, Essaouira, is only 3 hours away on the Atlantic coast. The high Atlas Mountains are one of the 3 ranges that rise from the Atlantic, crossing all Morocco all the way to the Algerian border. Marrakesh is best positioned to allow excursions into the mountains, the national parks, and skiing resorts. Winter sports can be practiced until late spring. Inhabited by Berbers, the mountain valleys are highly fertile due to the locals' ingenious and intriguing agricultural knowledge. If winter sports are not your cup of tea, the Atlantic awaits with sun all throughout the year and water sports. The town and fortress of Essaouira, formerly known as Mogador, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its Medina and a secluded port sheltered by an island located in front of the city. Surfing, kitesurfing, and windsurfing fanatics flock to this town and nearby locations where the trade winds and the Canaries currents favor these sports. And let's not forget the abundant fishing. So, what's gonna be? Reason number 8. Argan. The argan tree is native to Morocco. The fruit of this tree is used to make argan oil, one of the most in oils at the moment. After being used by locals for millennia, it has now become famous worldwide for its properties. Here are some of its benefits. It reduces inflammation, contains vitamin E, it is an antioxidant, it lowers cholesterol and improves heart health, it helps prevent diabetes, reduces the signs of aging, helps healing wounds and stretch marks, and moisturizes your hair. All these, except the latter, are only tested empirically, but proven by folk wisdom and experience. We, outside of Morocco, mostly use argan in our shampoos and conditioners. But I'm sure that millions of locals throughout the centuries can't be wrong. Argan is produced by hand in cooperatives of mostly Berber women for modest benefits, but large mechanized enterprises are driving the prices down and them out of business. The extraction of argan oil by hand is listed as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage, since the process is labor-intensive and requires know-how only achieved locally through a long-standing tradition. And yes, sometimes goats are involved. The oil is used on food, medicinally, and in cosmetics. As with all such products, buying local is the best way to go. Reason number 9. Jemel Fana. Located in front of the gates of the Almoravid Palace that once stood there in the 1100s, Jemel Fana is listed as a UNESCO masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity, and was the original location that started this UNESCO program. It is a plaza, a food market, a performing stage. It is the most notable and largest square of the Medina and of the city of Marrakesh, and stands today at the main entry into the souks of the Medina. As such, it also forms part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Almoravid Emir used the gate of his palace to arbitrate on the people's offenses, and the plaza also became, about 1,000 years ago, a place of execution. Later on, it was to be a mosque with a huge courtyard, but the mosque was never finished and fell into ruin. The name of the square can be interpreted as place of tranquility or as a place of annihilation, based on its history, although today none of these two names apply. I would call it a place for all your senses. The reason why Jemel Fana deserves a rare distinction is because it changes day after day, providing a different experience each time you visit. The parts of it, the noise of the labor, the human voices and faces, the music, the loudspeakers of the performers, the coiling cobras, the frantic moves of the Barbary monkeys held on a leash, the smells of each different dish served, the call for patrons, the multitude of languages, children playing. All these integral parts make up a sum that shapeshifts daily. I would add to this place its history. When I travel, I always try to imagine and pay homage to all those who walked there before me, to the pious and the villains, to the humble and the rich, to everyone who created the fabric upon which such a tradition endeavors to survive for centuries. I believe that each person leaves traces behind, an emotional residue, and thus places are more made out of remembrances than of the fleeting present. Each space has layers and layers of humanity condensed into it, like a book with 1,000 pages. When in Jam al-Fana, I flip through this book slowly, learning how to be myself a new person each day. One can say that it was there and understood. Before long, though, I succumb to the calls and sit down to have dinner next to a young couple. Eating with strangers is in itself a culture experience not to be missed. Jam al-Fana was severely affected by the September 8, 2023 earthquake. The adjacent Carbush Mosque collapsed that day. I hope the city can be spared in the future from such unfortunate events. Reason number 10. Tagine. Tagine is a fancy word we all use, but until you have tried one in Morocco, it only remains a fancy word. For me, a tagine was the fabulous present I received once for my birthday and used it as a decoration in my kitchen without having the faintest idea of what to do with it. In Marrakesh, I bought a few more tiny cute ones as souvenirs for friends. But then I ordered the dish and the light turned on. I stayed in a souk at the riad managed by women, something I highly recommend, and where I was able to place my order for dinner in the morning and show up at the agreed upon time to a table full of food ready waiting for me. I inhaled the pile of flavorful vegetables and meats in front of me. I doubt that I could ever replicate it, since the ingredients never taste the same somewhere else, but that's the most valid reason to return. One other time I ordered a lamb tagine with plums at the hotel restaurant. It was cooked down to a thick stew, maybe one of the best things I ever had. I remember the place. They even had wine to wash it down. Heavenly. Alcohol, though, is not a staple there. Your drink of choice is tea, particularly mint tea. Tea and sweets is also the menu of choice in most coffee shops. Make the line at the ones overlooking the Jam al-Fana and let it all etch itself into your memory. Supporting tourism and the local industry in Marrakesh is very important at the moment, even with just a little bit. It all counts. I'll be there again soon. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please don't smash any buttons. Just gently like and subscribe for more. The world is vast and it's all yours. Next time, you might also want to fall in love with this next destination over there. Thank you.